Hello there, fourth graders. Today we are going to be completing lesson 3-7, comparing and ordering fractions. You'll need your whiteboard marker and eraser, and of course your math journal. On your whiteboard, you are going to number 1, 2, and 3. You don't need to write down these numbers. Instead, next to number 1, 2, and 3, you're going to put a greater than, less than, or equal sign to make the number sentence true. Go ahead and insert the correct symbol. Number 1, the first number is different. It's actually in the ones place. So this number is less than. In number 2, the first number that's different is hundreds. It's greater than. The next one is in the 10,000s. Less than. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. What I want you to do for number 1, 2, and 3, just number 1, 2, and 3 in your whiteboard, is I want you to tell me just very quickly what is half of each number. Go ahead and write what half of each number is. Another way to say that is divided by 2. So, number 1, half of 12 is 6. Half of 16 is 8. And half of 8 is 4. All right, we're going to move into our math journal. We're going to be working in lesson 3-7, and you can open your journal page to page 86 and 87. We're actually going to work on these two pages together, and we'll start with page 86. At the top, it says ordering fractions. Write the following fractions in order from smallest to largest. So imagine that someone wasn't very hungry and they ordered a pizza. They just wanted a little bit. Which would give them the least amount of pizza? 4 out of 10 slices, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 2 out of 10, or 1 out of 10? Would you please put the smallest on the first line, which should be 1/10, or we can say 1 out of 10. Then cross that one off. What would be the next smallest fraction? 2 out of 10 or 2/10. Cross that one off. Next, 4/10, which is still less than half, because half of 10 is 5. 5/10 would be half. Next would be 7/10, followed by 8/10. Now, directly across from it on page 87, you're going to see a number line. This is now on page 87. It says, for the problems on the linked screen, which you don't have a linked screen, but on the previous screen, justify your conclusion by representing the approximate position for each fraction on the number line. So we're going to use all of these fractions, 1/10, 2/10, 4/10, 7/10, and 8/10, and put them on the fraction line. So halfway would be 5/10, just so you know that. That's why we did that warm-up, is what is half of those numbers. If you can figure out what half of the denominator is, you know what equals 1/2. So the first one that we will place would be 4/10, then 7/10, then 8/10. You don't have to write them here. I actually want you to write them on the number line, but this will remind us. 4/10 is a little less than half. So put that one there. 7/10 is about, let's say maybe here. 8/10, and 9/10, and so forth. So you're just trying to find what would be the approximate location. Remember, always use halfway point as a way to determine if it's more than half or less than half. Let's move back to page 86. Number 2, write the following fractions in order from smallest to largest. This time, all of the numerators are 1, which is the top number. Numerator. The bottom number determines how many equal pieces or equal sections. So if you had to eat something you really didn't like and your mom said you have to have one little part of it, would you rather want that in 100 pieces, 5 pieces, 12 pieces, 2 pieces, or 4? Well, if you think of a piece of, let's say, liver. I used to actually eat liver and bacon when I was a little kid, but most people are not big fans of it. But imagine that you had to eat something you didn't like. Would you rather want that big piece of liver in 100 pieces and only have to eat one? 5 pieces and eat one? 12 pieces and eat just one? Only in 2 pieces or in 4 pieces? Well, if it was divided into 100 little pieces and you only had to eat one, that would be a tiny, tiny little piece. Then what would be the next smallest amount? Well, if that big old piece of liver were in 12 equal pieces, that wouldn't be so bad. Next, 1/5. Then the next smallest would be 1/4 into 4 equal pieces, and the largest one would be equal to 1/2. 1/2. So I'm going to just write the fractions here. I'll put them in order in which we place them. Now what we're going to do is we're going to place all of these on the number line. Well, right now I know that 1/2 has to go halfway between 0 and 1. Now 1/4, think of this line being in 4 equal parts. 1/4 would be here. 1/5 would be a little bit smaller. So maybe just before that. 1/12 would be pretty small too. You think of that line being in 12 equal parts. And 1/100th, if that line was in 100 equal sections, 1/100th would probably be right there. So go ahead and place those on your number line. Moving back to page 86. The first two were made a little bit easier by having the same denominator, 10, or the same numerator, 1. In this case, we have 2 different denominators. We have 10 and we have 100. But let me show you something. Remember how we came up with equivalent fractions? You know what I could do? I could change that to hundredths. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do the top. Think of this as 30 hundredths. 3 dimes is the same as 30 pennies. Think of 6 tenths as 6 dimes, which is the same thing as 60 pennies. So keep that in mind, that these would be equivalent fractions that will help us place those on the number line. So the smallest fraction would be the one that would give us the least amount. Let's imagine it all out of 100 equal pieces. Well, the smallest would be 5 hundredths. Next would be 3 tenths, or what would be 30 hundredths, but we'll write down 3 tenths. What would come next? Remember, 6 tenths is the same thing as saying 60 pennies, 60 hundredths. Next would come 45 hundredths. What's half of 100? Think of that for a minute. 50. So just remember that would equal half. And so 45 hundredths is a little less than half. Next would be 6/10 or 60 hundredths. And lastly would be 90 hundredths, which is getting closer to 1 whole. Now let's go ahead and place those on our number line. We're back to page 87. I'm just going to write the fractions here so we don't forget. We put them in this order: 5 hundredths, 3/10, 45 hundredths, 6/10, and 90 hundredths. Oops, 90 hundredths. So right here would be half. And we said that 50 hundredths would equal half. So that will help us place the rest. So 5 hundredths would come way over here. 3/10 would be, imagine that this line was in 10 equal segments. Maybe right about here. 45 hundredths is getting closer to 1/2, but not more than. 6/10 would be the same as 60 hundredths. And 90 hundredths is pretty close to 1 whole. Now, we are not going to do number 4, 5, or 6 unless you choose to do those on your own on pages 86 and 87.